So I'm so excited to be introducing this author and the conversationalist today. This is Mr. Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, and his debut book is a collection of 12 short stories that explore a setting of a dystopian near future that deals with the topics ranging from black identity, race, and the American criminal justice system. And also there were some themes of assimilation, violence, and just trying to survive as a person of color. So Mr. Adjei-Brenyah is from Spring Valley, New York. Is that correct? Okay.
Spring Valley, Rockland County.
Okay. It's in Rockland County. Mm-hmm. So he graduated from SUNY, which is the State University of New York at Albany. And he also earned a Master's of Fine Arts from Syracuse University. He was the 2016-2017 Olive B. O'Connor Fellow in Fiction at Colgate University, and also a National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. That's something to, that's quite an accomplishment. Now, Mr. Adjei-Brenyah will be in conversation with Mr. Damon Young, and I want to give you a little bit about his background as white, because we're very excited that he's here with us. Mr. Damon Young is an author and essayist and a columnist for GQ magazine, and founder of Very Smart Brothers. So hopefully he'll give a chance to let us know a little more about that. His first book, and I have a copy of it here, is What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker, a memoir and essay. So, wow. It was released in March of 2019, and the book consists of a collection of personal essays, primarily, again, about race, gender, class, and the black identity. Mr. Young is a graduate of Canisius College with a degree in English, and he resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with his family. Without further ado, I want to introduce to all of you, and it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah in conversation with Mr. Damon Young. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, yeah, I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for that lovely intro. I'm going to start calling myself the conversationalist. I'm going to add that
I know.
to my bio now.
It sounds so cool.
Yeah, that's a title now, the conversationalist. It's like the, what was Denzel, the Equalizer?
Yeah.
Start a whole franchise. And so, all right, so we're in conversation today. And so...
Since you are a conversationalist.
Since I'm the conversationalist. And we actually met for the first time probably about 15 minutes ago. Yeah, we were both in line for registration and just saw each other and it's like, hey, what's up? And, we've been trying to connect. I guess his publicist, my publicist have been trying to connect us, get us to do events together. And so this is the first time that we've actually been in the same space. But it's actually not. Oh, you could go ahead. I won't stop the praise break. Go ahead.
Man, I'm down for applause for anything.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. But as we found out during conversation, we were actually both in London at the exact same time earlier this week. And for separate book-related things.
Crazy. And
had no idea. And where were you again?
I was, my hotel was in Hyde Park, but I was just kind of in, I guess, central London. This is where I had to go to the Piccadilly. Is that what they call it?
That's where I was too.
Yeah, I had to do some bookstore things there, and my publisher was in that area. And then I went to Wales, actually, which is crazy. Wales, you know what I mean? Behind book stuff. Wild. But yeah, that's where I was.
And so just considering where we were earlier this week and where we are now, and thinking about your first short story, the Finkelstein 5, which is, I read it on the, I was actually on the flight home from London, and I read that, and as I was telling you earlier, I had to actually put the book down for an hour just to process what I just read, and also because I wanted to extend the reading process. I didn't want it to end, and it was an 8-hour flight, so I had time. And so throughout that story, you make references to the blackness levels. And, at the end, when, spoiler alert, but, the protagonist ends up dying, getting shot, and his blackness level is down to 0.0. So right now, sitting here today, where are your levels?
It's a good question, and and at the very end of the story, I got to continue the spoiler. But actually, rather than 0.0, it's nothing point nothing.
Nothing point nothing. Yeah.
And I did that particularly because for throughout the story to move through the world, he's adjusting to to the 10th of a decimal point, as like that's how specific he's getting. And when we think about what does that number actually mean, what does it represent? I think it means a lot of things, but what it mostly is him registering and understanding the stereotypes associated with his skin color and his like maybe potential for violence, his potential to do anything actually, as seen through the eyes of this observer. And I think for me, what's important to get down to the nothing point nothing is that it's not that construct isn't real. You know what I mean? It's about these people it's about when you view yourself through this observing eye. Mm-hmm. And so ideally, I hope I'm at 10. That is to say, I'm just being myself. And I think 10 for me is just me doing whatever I want, exactly how I want to do it, wherever I am. And I can't say that's always the case. I think if you want to be upwardly mobile in this world, or even just sometimes even be safe in the world, actually, you might have to adjust and code switch. We know about code switching, and we know about how some of us have to sort of adjust the way we move through the world to find success. Part of my like active sort of goal for myself at this juncture is to be exactly who I am without sort of considering that observer that's trying to think about my potential to be whatever thing,
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about that dual consciousness that we all need to possess in order to just navigate through America, through space, through time, through the world, and ideally, I would stay at a 10.10 or 10.0.
Yeah.
But I'm even sitting here today thinking I'm probably at like a 7.6 or something like that. Yeah. Like I'm not. Yeah. For one reason too, I'm a pretty severe introvert, so I need some alcohol in order to get to my highest level.
I was gonna say like you gotta be like mid concert. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've only had this to drink.
Playing in the background.
Yeah, there has to be like Knuck If You Buck, maybe some MOP, to take it back even further.
Trying to spaz out there.
So I'm at a 7.6, even though I have the facade of a 10. I'm rocking this shirt, I'm wearing all black, and it's intentional. I got this, the hat from the On the Run tour. Like I have all these totems of blackness carrying them around with me.
Yeah.
But I do, even subconsciously, sometimes find myself, even as black as I want to be, not even stamping it out or flattening it, but adjusting.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard. And I think you have to. I mean, especially for me, like, it's new, even though, I mean, it's been kind of a pressure cooker the last couple of months. It is new for me to be sitting on this side of this kind of event, And I know even from just when I started till now, like, I wouldn't even look like this when I started my events, actually. You know what I mean? I'd be like some type of blazer or something just because I felt like somehow you kind of buy into this idea, like, if you're serious or professional, you're going to wear this sort of, I don't know, for some reason, a blazer is the thing. And, but I mean, again, like, I think so much of what we think of as professionalism is kind of coded racism.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's a long, hard process to unlearn all of it. But what I try to say for myself is that today, though, I really did like kind of this is comfortable to me. It's also my friend's brand, so I wore it. You know what I mean? And I'm going to do it. But beyond just like what my clothes are, I'm like, I'm trying not to double second guess myself based on like, are my outcomes going to be limited because of, I say XYZ, which is, I can't go all the way crazy, you know what I mean? But I've been lucky enough that like, one of the real currencies that I am kind of aware of in like success is that like it's harder for like, I don't know, literary whatever to just kick me out because I'm being myself now. Mm-hmm. And so for me, a lot of this first year has been like, okay, I've done X, Y, Z. I think I can I'm allowed to be myself, Yeah. And that's and it's funny because even though my book is about what it is, publishing, as I know like has the same problems as any other sort of organization or war spirit space,
Yeah, I mean, it's just getting that publishing thing. It is probably even whiter. I mean,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is so white that Rick James tried to snort it before. So I'm used to white spaces. I went to a mostly white university, and this publishing world is a monster.
It's a different animal.
Yeah,
People don't know. It's a different animal. And where I'm from, it's mostly minorities. I only have like 5 white people in my graduating class. But since I went to MFA program, so it was obviously much more homogenous there. But yeah, in publishing, and it's interesting because I wrote my book, and I'll be at this nice fancy dinner and they're talking about my book, and I can't say how many times I've been the only black person. Mm-hmm. It's like so many times, and it's just like. Sometimes it makes you I don't like it because it makes me second guess myself. I'm like, y'all all like this? You know what I mean? Like, maybe I didn't go hard enough. Also, maybe the fact that we're not thinking about it in this moment means that I didn't really say what I needed to say. But, that's part of the game. And I think, again, a part of what this year, I guess, moving forward for me is now that I feel I'm in a place that maybe they can't kick me out immediately, I can say that very clearly,
Yeah, they're not. You're after you wrote that, you're not getting kicked out. Like you're here.
I mean, you can get kicked out, but I think I can tell them about themselves a little bit more, But you got to be careful because you got to I can't just jump out you got to I still got people that kind of depend on me, so I got to watch it a little bit, But I can't. But it is true that I do feel maybe now that I can say I'm just happy to be here mode is kind of done.
Yeah. Yeah, and just that notion of respectability, which exists in many of the short stories in your book, particularly the ones that deal with retail.
Yeah.
And just performing for white audiences, for white managers, for white customers.
Yeah.
For white people, and and a recurring theme in the book, and even in mine a little bit, is just the idea that respectability is a fucking fraud.
Yeah.
And we we all should have realized that, particularly with what happened in 2016.
Yeah.
Following Obama's, presidency, and then this coming next, any effort to kind of stamp ourselves out or flatten ourselves to appease or assimilate are just fruitless and time consuming.
Yeah.
You have better things to do.
I think it's a fraud. It's a Ponzi scheme, and it's kind of a poison because sometimes you go so far into it and you kind of forget who you were before, mm-hmm. and that's really dangerous as well. So I think with the thinking about respectability, which again kind of is that first story in this book, which if people haven't read it, involves a character who adjusts his blackness on a scale from 1 to 10. This idea that you should perform or do anything to be deserved. To deserve to be seen as a human in the eyes of some other, that's always going to be kind of a tunnel to nowhere, I think.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, obviously there's times where you kind of have to do it, just literally to eat. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, a lot of what trying to be successful or trying to be what I go for is to get into the space where I do not have to do that at all, where I can really, really try to be myself, and also then use that sort of whatever social equity or power that I've amassed to allow people around me to have that same sort of privilege, mm-hmm. So it's a problem though, and it really is, because I think some people you can get really good at it,
yeah.
And I think for me I do know how to switch it really quick, and I know that I've been allowed and afforded some opportunities because of that, and there's people who are just as smart, I think just as sort of savvy, just as talented or more talented, who don't have that same switch. And aren't going to be granted the same opportunities that I have been. And so for me, that's a problem that I hope that if I I'm given sort of some power in some sort of, I don't know, creative space sense, that I can sort of maybe remove that sort of idea. And I think about it a lot. I teach at Syracuse or I taught at Syracuse University. And again, when I started off, I used to wear pretty much almost a 3-piece suit every single class. I was a grad teacher. I taught as a grad student, and then I taught just as a professor. Normal and very incrementally almost. First the vest is gone,
all
you know
right.
what I mean. Then the tie is gone.
Then the
now
blazer, maybe.
Now the blazer's gone, and no lie, now I'm in the faculty meetings in sweatpants. Straight up. And but it's important for me because I'll teach in sweatpants sometimes, and I think it's important for my students and my fellow faculty members and myself to know I'm a professor either way. Like it has nothing to do with my ability to purchase clothes, and wear a fitted suit from whoever, so again, like it really is like it's important to keep an eye on it because I think it's really easy to be like, okay, look, they accepted me in the space. Look what I'm wearing. I'm a better person when I'm doing this thing. You can buy into that lie just as easily. And so I try to be kind of vigilant with myself about it and just sort of know that, that's not really anything.
Yeah, and, that idea of respectability, again, which is a recurring theme in your book and which you talk about now. And I guess just, to summarize what you're saying, if you were to really be at a 10, then you would come to work in a robe, basically, or maybe just a towel.
It'd be like Adidas sweats and like, I don't know, right. And socks and like basketball shorts.
So one reason why I understand why some people still buy into that notion is because it's safe, or at least it has a facade of safety. It makes people believe that they're safe because, there is this behemoth that exists out there that is trying to kill us.
Yeah.
And that concept of death, of your body leaving you, of just you just not existing in a physical form anymore, is also a recurring theme throughout your book. It starts off, with the first paragraph in the first, in the first story is about a decapitated girl, and it continues on. You have the chapter or this essay about the school shooting.
Yeah.
The essay about abortion. The essays about even in the retail essay with the woman who committed suicide. And so this idea of dying is a persistent thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because I do actively attempt to subvert the white gaze, whiteness, all of that in my work and just in who I am, but I also do want to stay alive.
Right.
I also have a wife and 2 kids that I need to, take care of. I also like going to brunch, and I don't want to miss that. And so I'm just, wondering how much that concept just really influenced the stories and your thinking behind creating these characters in the story.
Right. As you can tell, it's a very lighthearted read.
It's hilarious. I mean, there are parts in it, like I don't want some of y'all laughing, but there are parts in it that we're allowed to laugh at that are really funny. That was a joke too. But it is funny, some parts.
No, it's well, okay, so there is a lot of sort of loss and like I guess physical death in the story, mm-hmm. in the stories, and I think trauma. So much of trauma is sort of like that constant wrestling with the wanting to have the people that we love around us and knowing they're gone. That kind of unsureness about what's on this other side. This sort of we're here, they're there. That gap that can never exactly be bridged, mm-hmm. But I think for me, a lot of me coming to, I think just as a human, we're forever sort of fascinated with that sort of space. But also specifically for me, I was in college and Trayvon Martin was murdered. And for a lot of people my age, as is the case for a lot of people my age, that was kind of a big, like, sort of touchstone moment for me. And like I was affected. And again, this person was kind of robbed from this, they taken from this earth. And I knew it was because he looked like me, and I knew that it was unfair. And then, the person who did it to him was acquitted. And so it's like this trauma that happens, and then it's sort of redoubled by this sort of, I don't know, societal sort of shrug that happens over and over again. Not even shrug, but I actually like thumbs up maybe even. And so I guess I'm interested in that for a lot of different reasons. So yeah, and even in college, I tell the story often. Me and my bro, we made like these pamphlets anonymously, and we, I was like feeling like very undergrad sort of like energy. I was like, what, I'm gonna do this, and we like printed off 500 copies secretly, and then like 2 a.m. on the campus, we like threw them all over the place. And I remember I had this kind of self-righteous energy about myself. I went to bed thinking like, what, I fixed racism today. Like, let me go to bed. Like, I was like, that was easy. Like, why didn't they just make a pamphlet? And then I woke up expecting to see sort of the New World Order we'd brought in and like this big kind of crazy revolution. And maybe unsurprisingly, we woke up and nothing had happened. I always remember seeing it. I saw a janitor throwing them out. We had pretty much just littered. And I remember like really not liking that. And so now again, so I had this sort of death that sort of spurred that action. And what was good for me that I learned though from that was that for me, powerful fiction or powerful art, it isn't necessarily just like going on this hill like this is the answer. I think that's what I was doing in that pamphlet maybe. I think now the fiction I'm sort of really, or powerful fiction that affects me and the fiction I think I try to go for asks really hard questions. It asks like me and the reader to convert this higher level, like why are we okay with this, or maybe what is it that is allowing us to persistently and consistently allow these sort of cycles of death to emerge in our society or whatever. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. But also I also learned from doing that pamphlet that like certain narrative spaces make me feel that's important to do whether or not my name is attached, And so now with these stories, I felt like, especially starting with that first one, and it kind of became sort of, if I've ever had like a breakthrough, that was it. In writing it, I was like, I want this to exist even if my name isn't on it, just like I did with that pamphlet. And I'm not on this hill saying, I fixed racism, but I still have this feeling that like, what, this is important and maybe we'll do something.
Yeah, and and the concept of not really having an answer, and that's hard as fuck to admit to ourselves, that we, can put our heads together, could put our minds together, put our hearts together, and can't fix this, can't solve it. And this idea of like the tediousness of Black life is something that is atmospheric. It's past structural, it's past emotional, it's atmospheric and it's spiritual.
Yeah.
Where it, it's a weight that just exists in the air and you have to reckon with it one way or the other. And so a question I wanted to ask you is how central is that tediousness of Black life to how white people think of themselves? Like, is white still white
without it
in America without Black life being tedious?
It's important. I mean, I don't know. First, again, I don't know if that's brave of me to say in this case, but like, I don't know. But it's kind of, when you think about it, can be pretty scary because
you're, in your story, the Zimmerland,
yeah.
Zimmerland really dives into like the really deep neuroses that exist there.
And I mean, on some level, like in many ways, like the sort of like racial structure that we have in this, like right now, like it was very much created so there could be like an underclass. Mm-hmm. And I do think just, we're so used to this sort of hierarchical sort of system, and we just like if you want to look at like the, like, I don't know, more economic side of it, like I do think the rich and even the middle class feel more comfortable knowing there's someone doing worse than them. I think many people feel like better actually knowing that, And so with whiteness, I don't know because I've never been in that space, but I think there may be sort of like sometimes implicit, sometimes explicit sense that, man, like it is nice to have like something to float on, even if it's these bodies of a whole people, And I don't know that, but I have a sense that could be the case, which is again a scary thing to. But what I hope might be felt is like that's always that same thing will drag you down, If you follow that, then all of a sudden you get someone like our current president, and who does he really serve? No one but him, himself really.
Yeah, it doesn't when you benefit from oppression in that way and you're oppressed in that way, then you're not able to be fully human.
Yeah.
You're not able to benefit from like the spectrum of humanity the same way that vulnerable people are.
And it's a matter of time before that same sort of thing that's sort of giving you like the letting you in that point, there'll be a juncture where you'll get eaten too, I think, So it's a scary thing to think about, but also that's why I say asking those hard questions, because that's an example of that hard question that maybe, just asking and you might confer at a higher level, might be able to be like, you know what, just asking this question, we might get somewhere maybe powerful.
Mm-hmm. And, and one thing that I greatly appreciated about your work, and this is particularly about chapters that were I don't want to say race neutral because I don't believe such a thing exists, but weren't explicitly black.
Yeah.
Okay, and the chapters particularly are Light Splitter, Lark Street, and Error.
Yeah.
And each of those chapters, let me think. Light Splitter dealt with the school shooter. Lark was with the couple that got the abortion.
Yeah.
And the Era was with like dystopian like future where the world had been changed and people were committed to telling the truth.
Yeah.
Regardless of the consequences. And one thing that I found myself doing while reading these stories is I'm imagining each of the characters as black. And I've done that before when reading other work, but this was the first time I realized this is the first time I actually realized I was doing it while I was doing it. And and that's a testament to just how you constructed the chapters.
Yeah.
And the language that you use.
Yeah.
And it reminds me even of when we're talking about whiteness and blackness or whatever, even a few years back when The Hunger Games was actually a movie and there was that whole controversy because Rue, was black and she was black in the book.
Yeah.
But then, she was black in the movie and people, couldn't fucking handle it. And so have you felt any of that sort of pushback with creating characters that are, and writing this book and creating this world and these characters and maybe people asking you, where are the white people?
I think people know better than trying to push back in my face about that kind of thing. But I also, I'm sure maybe it will come in Hollywood land. I'm trying and I'll be quick because I know we have to get to questions. I know that I'm sure as I'm doing that, I had to explicitly with my lawyer be like, you can't. If they want to change the race of these characters, they have to ask me. AKA, they can't do it. Just in case. But but what you said is important for me, and I think about it because there is sort of in fiction, unfortunately, because of the canon, because of the way we teach fiction, there is sort of this white default.
Yeah.
And I think what part of why you're happening, and it's interesting because you expect sort of fiction to come with you kind of remove the author, but I think naturally that we kind of do put the author in place. So for me, in my mind, part of why that effect is there is because I am very, very intentional about the order of the stories. So the very, very first story is called The Finkelstein Five. We know explicitly that's a black character, and it's also blackness or maybe racial violence more specifically is what the story is quote unquote about. I think it's about more than that, but just to say that simply. The second story is a very, very short story that's almost the least fictional, just about my life and my mom, both my parents are Ghanaian immigrants. There's the word language, Tweez using it. It's also undeniably kind of a black thing again. Mm-hmm. So by the time we get to the third story, which might be quote unquote race neutral maybe, and it's also this time, it's in a different space and time. I think you've kind of been trained to expect the person we're supposed to look at to be black, and so you have that effect. And I kind of, for me, that was important to sort of establish, even, and it can happen just by order, just the story order, I think, and then once you go from there, I think you're kind of trained all throughout it to, if not that they're black, that they at least could be, which is not always the case.
And the intentionality matters for the audience, right? Yeah. It matters for the audience, but for the person creating it, it's this imagining. Yeah. When you're creating these worlds and you're creating these images and these pictures, you're imagining people who look like you. Yeah. People who are you, right? In some aspects, and we don't really get that many opportunities to do that. And when we do, sometimes we're asked, to insert a white character or. Can we at least make the best friend white, or can we at least do that, or inject a Becky somewhere, inject a Becky. That feels like something that could be sold somewhere, like a warehouse full of inject a Beckys. And so I appreciate just this work and you just being as authentic and as transparent and as vulnerable as a work to do it. And fiction and vulnerability, don't often go hand in hand because someone is not writing about themselves. Yeah. But this is a deeply vulnerable work. Yeah. With deeply vulnerable topics. It's deeply self-conscious. And again, I was like just amazed by it.
Thank you. I mean, it means a lot to me. I appreciate it. And for me, you know, I think actually for me, and I think that's what it's kind of for me. That's sort of like what determines what kind of writing you should do. Actually, I think through fiction, I'm actually able to get like right at the things that I'm most afraid of. Actually, things that I'm most scared about. I can be most honest. I can implicate myself honestly. It's funny. People ask me like, which story is like closest to your life or most real, and I'm like, it might be the story that has like a 12-tongue God character and like, you know, all these kind of magic things. Because to me, some fiction is what fiction can do is it can represent this thing I'm in my head. You know, I write fiction. I'm in my head a lot. You know, this space that isn't exactly in the world, but I feel it. And so through fiction, I can represent that really, really just as like clearly as possible sometimes. And so I do try to just be as honest and earnest actually as I can be, and then hope people I kind of like fuck with it, I guess.
So is it time
for
questions?
Time. Yeah.
Time for questions?
Yeah, it's question time.
So,
any questions?
Please.
Maybe right here in the blue.
I was wondering about your choice, if you could talk about it, to explore these themes in short fiction or essay as opposed to novel.
Yeah. The question is about, you could hear it, short story. To me, that, I part of it is I went to MFA program, so I think I was reading so much short stories. And even prior to that, I was reading a lot of short stories from one of my first mentors. But also, I think I liked the short form and the short story collection because I can be so many things at once. You know, I have a lot of ideas, you know, and they don't necessarily have to be the same story, but I think I have a sense they fit together, like an album almost maybe. And so, and I like that feeling of giving you maybe like the tip of the iceberg, you know? And so for me, these stories happen to feel like they make sense for that. But you know that if I have an idea that fits a novel, like then I'll do that. I really like to, if I have an idea that fits like a screenplay, hopefully I'll be able to do that. If I have an idea that fits a song, you know, even that stuff. I really like to try to like make the story tell me what it needs to be. And these ones kind of told me they needed to be short stories. Thank you for that question.
Gentlemen, congratulations on your success, you know, continued success.
Oh, thank you.
This question is for the both of you. I actually went to school with Damon at Canisius College up in Buffalo, New York. It was a culture shock for me because I came from Brooklyn, New York, all the way to Buffalo, New York. And when I look back at my experiences at Canisius, it has taught me, one, patience, and then two, addressing ignorance as teachable moments. How has going to a PWI helped you today?
So like, yes, Syracuse, like I went to grad school at Syracuse and it's helped me a lot and teaching at one too, you know. There's been so many times where, you know, someone will say something and you're just like almost stunned by like, oh, wow, like that's pretty bad, you know. But because I do take teaching so seriously, I am, especially when I'm in that sort of space, I'm able to be like, okay, that's not, I know like whoever that is, they're not evil. They're not a bad person. They just haven't had a chance to see much yet. And I kind of feel grateful. I'm like, this is exactly why I'm here. And so it does teach me patience and also kind of like opens up my capacity to feel like patient with other people who maybe aren't in the same position, maybe are older and should know better, but don't still. But there's been so many opportunities. I mean, I find out, I call them like opportunities, but so many chances where that kind of thing has happened. Someone has said something really ignorant or wrong, and I've seen them in real time over the course of a year grow and develop. And so I think being at it's kind of, maybe what I'm saying is it's like increased my hope actually a little bit. That like there is like potential for like people to be like, oh, like I wasn't trying to be like an asshole. They didn't.
You just don't know.
They didn't know. And so that's, and I can't, I mean, there's other times where like my hope decreases dramatically.
Yeah. And I guess for me, just really quickly, one thing it taught me, my experience was the idea of privilege. Because, you know, I played basketball. I was on a basketball team at Canisius. And so I didn't have the same experience as a typical black student there. You know, I was insulated from many of the things, like people will come at lunchtime complaining about, you know, financial aid or like this professor that they couldn't switch or whatever, and I didn't have any of those issues. And I just felt like that experience just really gave me a groundwork for understanding privilege and how it works, and how even if you are a person who is considered to be a, you know, vulnerable or at-risk person, you could still experience a level of privilege. And that, you know, built to me understanding male privilege, white privilege, Christian privilege in all the intersections of it. So that's probably my greatest takeaway from my time at Canisius.
We have one up here too. There's someone right up here. Maybe these are you than him.
Someone else first?
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Okay, cool. I want to get back to your discussion about respectability. So if you're looking at a Venn diagram, you've got two circles, right? One side is your respectability, the other side are standards. Like on a scale of 1 to 100, what percentage do you think those circles overlap?
I guess I'm always like super curious or suspect of like the standard setter, like, you know. I think that if the standard is about something that I can think of as mostly arbitrary, and a lot of times for me it usually moves down to something pretty arbitrary that is not connected to like my quality of my person or like my moral character or something like that, then I'm not super into it. So I think that a lot of I think that respectability sort of is insidious, that it will swallow up or like hide under standards a lot. So I'm like sort of, I don't know the percentage or whatever, but I'm sort of like suspect. You know?
I feel like it's close to a circle, a perfect circle, that Venn. I mean, because when you're talking about standards in terms of like behavior, and in terms of kindness, and in terms of just reducing harm, then I mean, those things exist separate from respectability. But in terms of standards in regards of like how you dress at work, or, you know, the language that you might use, you know, when communicating with someone, and you want to convince them that you know how to talk this way, or you know how to speak this way, then that standard and respectability, it's basically, you know, tomato.
And we also know that the standard, this guy will do something, it flip-flops all the time. You know, the way we respond to it, the way we address it, the way it's punished. So, you know, I think it can feel like a circle a lot. But I don't know. Sometimes I think there is a such thing as like right and wrong, of course. But I think that like when it's like administered by some kind of like, I don't know, overarching overlord bodies person, I'm suspect of it pretty much all the time. Up front.
Yeah, so my question
Thank
is,
you for that question.
how can white writers ensure there's more representation and diversity in their own work without overstepping lines or being offensive or causing harm to the general desire to have that diversity?
I mean, I think that for me, like, writing the world sort of like as you know it to be true is like, can go a long way. I think it's important to like have that in mind, just like, and having that in your heart, but also not try to like, again, like like to like hit some like diversity checklist. You know, the world is full of multiples. There's so many different types of people across so many different types of paradigms of existence, and not just race, sexuality, and gender. So many different things, and so I think trying to be honest to your story, and not sort of, I don't know, is the idea like maybe pandering to some imagined audience, you know, and not doing that. I think, you know, hopefully you'll find a place that's honest, you know.
Yeah, everything you just said. I again, just be as authentic to as true to your own story. You know, where the danger happens is when you try to, like I joked about, inject a Becky. It's when you try to inject a Negro inject a Negro into your story where one just doesn't belong. You know, and just tell.
Then they quantified.
Yeah. Just tell, you know.
And did something totally nice.
You know, have a Becky like eating oxtail. Like, just tell the story. Just tell the story as true to yourself. And the thing is, the way to have that reflect in your writing is have that reflect in your personal life. And so you don't have to, have like a checklist or have an injection machine. It's just organic and natural for you.
Right up front, we have one. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. No, yeah, with her, then maybe you can go next. Yeah.
I was wondering how, for those of us who were the first or one of the few 50 years ago, how is what, and a child today by our nephews, nieces saying, you didn't do enough. And we say, but we went to jail. We picketed. Some of us died. But you say we didn't do enough to make the world better for you. And how do you now us having, you're still saying, well, we were one of the few. How do you live your lives now? So that 50 at the Gaithersburg Book Festival 50 years from now, you won't sit here with that feeling of heaviness that you didn't do enough. Is there something more you can do? I think I heard you say you just live your life fully and authentically, but is there something that you can do?
I mean, for the first part of it, I think to sort of blanketly ever try to say someone from your generation who to come at that generation with anything other than like an immense, crazy gratitude is like wild.
That's mad disrespectful.
It's
like
crazy.
anyone that says something like that, it's
it's not only immensely disrespectful. It's super. It hurts my feelings, to even hear it. It hurts my feelings, but I do try to think now about like how I can just maximize, like every time I have the mic, like how can I use it to do something real? If I have a voice and the voice has amplification now, for however briefly that is. How can I use it to do something purposeful? For me specific, and I think everyone has to find their lane. For me specifically, like very specifically for me, like I'm leaving Syracuse University. I'm gonna try to like go back to where I'm from and like be in the school system is like terrible, and try to like do literacy stuff because I think like that's kind of like the lane I could do stuff. And my community happens to be, if they're not South Americans, Haitian immigrants, first generation African immigrants, people, whatever. And so that's what I try to do. But I don't know. I think, I don't. I think if you have a strong sense of history, there's no way you would look at someone who's come before and just be like, you didn't do enough. It's like it's rude and it's like also ignorant, I think.
Ditto.
Yeah. Maybe we have time for this one right in front. Yeah. Thank you for that question. And I think you did spectacularly.
Yeah,
thank God.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you every day.
Thank you.
My question's for Damon. I heard the show that you did with Josh Johnson, the 1A show.
Okay.
And I feel like he did this on purpose. At the very end of the show, he said to you, what do you do when people come up to you, or white people come up to you and say, come on, there's more to life than just black and white? How do you answer that? And the answer that you gave him, I thought, was off the chain. I mean, I talked to everybody, and they said, listen to that show, and I kept emailing that show, and everybody listened to the end. I was just wondering if you could repeat your answer.
Could you repeat it? Please, could you really repeat it?
A white guy comes up to you and says, hey man,
why, it's not always about black and white. Why is it with you everything is black and white?
Man, I wish I could recall what I said. I don't remember what I said.
Basically,
but
what you
had
said
something
was
to say.
Life is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, you set me up because I do not.
You gotta remember your bars.
I don't remember what I said, but if
Something like, what is life about here in the United States?
yeah, it's black. I mean, it is. It's you can't divorce race from American life. Maybe I said it much more eloquently, but yeah, you can't. Race is an essential part of who we are as Americans. It's a part of our foundation. It's a part of everything that's been constructed around us. It's a part of the air we breathe. It has everything to do with where we live, where we send our kids to school, where we pay taxes, how we pay taxes, what we own, what we don't own, what we, where we decide to live, where we think it's safe to move to. Race plays a part in all of that. And so, for someone to try to ask me how I can, why I see things as black and white, I want to ask them, how come you can't see things in color?
There you go. That was it. Yeah.